We often say that God is love, and of course, that's true, and it's awesome. In fact, a scripture many of us have memorized is 1 John 4, 7 and 8. Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves knows God, and is born of God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. I did have it memorized. Do we really, though, deeply understand what God's love looks like? Because I think sometimes we think it's very comforting. It's like a mother's love. And that's true. It's true. But it's not always. There are many facets of God's love. God's love is a many-faceted, many-splendored thing. And in the picture we get in the book of Hosea that we're talking about today is kind of outrageous. It's a little shocking. And our title here, our key word is relentless. God's love is relentless. And our key verse is Hosea 2, 19 and 20. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in righteousness and justice, in love and compassion. I will betroth you in faithfulness, and you will acknowledge the Lord. And that's beautiful. But there's struggle getting to that verse, and we'll talk about that. The timing of Hosea, he ministered between 755 and 715 BC. And if you've been paying attention when we've been talking about the historical things that have been going on, you might remember that in 722 BC, right in the middle of that, is when the northern kingdom of Israel was defeated by the Assyrians and was lost, really, taken captive and lost. So Hosea spoke to this northern kingdom of Israel during that time. Hosea and Amos, another prophet we'll be talking about soon, they overlap in the northern kingdom. Micah and Isaiah, they were at about the same time in the southern kingdom of Judah. As I said, the story of Hosea is a bit shocking. Apparently, he fell in love with a woman named Gomer, and God knew that she would be unfaithful to Hosea. And he told Hosea to marry her anyway, even knowing that she would commit adultery. And all I can say is, well, at least he was warned. But this again points out the difficult life of a prophet. Knowing the future isn't all it's cracked up to be. I think we often think that our lives would be better if we just knew what was going to happen and have a little control over what's going on. If we knew what was going to happen, we'd have some control. But Hosea knew, and he had no control over what happened. It didn't help him. He did know, however, that it was God's will and that he was being obedient when he married this woman that he apparently cared about. And being obedient is what mattered to him. Hosea doesn't tell us how he felt about this strange arrangement. He trusted God and he did what God asked. And it makes me think, what would you do? What would I do if God asked me to do something so difficult, something that would obviously cause me pain? Would I be willing? He knew that it would serve the people of Israel, because this was going to be a living parable. And I talked about that when we talked about Ezekiel, the living parable. Remember, Ezekiel demonstrated things like how many years the kingdom of Israel would be punished. He had to lie on his side for 390 days on his left side, and then to demonstrate how God was going to punish the kingdom of Judah, he had to lie on his other side for 40 more days. That is weird and difficult. And Hosea had another living parable to enact. So he married Gomer, and that is our next verse, Hosea 1, 3 through 5. So Hosea married Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she became pregnant and gave Hosea a son. And the Lord said, "Name the child Jezreel, for I am about to punish King Jehu's dynasty, to avenge the murders he committed at Jezreel. In fact, I will bring an end to Israel's independence. I will break its military power in the Jezreel Valley." So Hosea's child is brought into this parable himself. by being given the name Jezreel. And that's the name of a valley that divides the northern kingdom of Israel. It's between Galilee and Samaria. And it's where Jehu, this king who has his dynasty has continued since then, it's where he murdered King Ahab's son, Jehoram, in order to become king himself. This prediction that God has in these verses of the overthrow of King Jehu's dynasty and the loss of Israel's independence happened about 25 years later. So this son of Hosea was a 25-year-old when this actually came about. Then Gomer gave birth to 2 more children. However, Hosea doesn't believe the children are his, but he became a father to them. God chose their names too. The first was Lo Ruhama, which means not loved, ouch, and Lo Ami, which means not my people. God says that he will no longer show love to the people of Judah. So Hosea was also talking to the people of Judah, not just the northern kingdom, but the southern kingdom of Judah. And he is also saying that the people of Israel are not his people, and he is not their God. So not showing love, he didn't stop loving them, but he stopped showing love. So it's a little less radical than cutting off the northern kingdom entirely, which is what he did. And it might bother you to hear that God is so, I want to say human here. It almost appears that he isn't above it all like we expect him to be. You can almost interpret these names as describing God's bitterness about unrequited love. The Westminster Confession, to which Presbyterians subscribe, says that God is impassible. Not impossible, impassible. Meaning he is without passions. He is not subject to emotions. And this is a difficult idea to understand in light of what we just read from Hosea. We can only reconcile these two ideas by appreciating that God describes our situation to us using analogies that we can understand. When he demonstrates our situation through Hosea's relationship to Gomer, God isn't asking us to pity him for his unrequited love because Israel didn't love him sufficiently or because we reject him. God is fine. God doesn't need our love, but God does love us infinitely. Gomer is the one who suffers and is to be pitied. God continues to speak through Hosea, describing how he will punish wayward Israel and then win her back. So God's love may look like punishment. The punishment isn't the revenge of an angry God. Remember, God is truly impassible and offers us infinite love. Rather, this punishment is meant to show us, to prove to Israel that her false gods did nothing for her. It was God who blessed her. He says in Hosea 2:12 and 13, that's up here, I will ruin her vines and her fig trees, which she said were her pay from her lovers. I will make them a thicket, and wild animals will devour them. I will punish her for the days she burned incense to the Baals. She decked herself with rings and jewelry and went after her lovers, but me she forgot. So what God is saying here is he will withdraw his blessings. This is not like he's beating up Israel out of anger. He's just saying, you think that these blessings came from the Baals? They did not. They came from me. They came from God, and I can withdraw them. That's the punishment. Another thing that God's love can look like, which we're much more familiar with, is forgiveness. This is the next, just the next passage, and I want to read a kind of a long section here because it's so beautiful and so tender. And please note, this forgiveness is offered without requiring Israel to apologize at all. Therefore, I've got the wrong thing up here. There it is. Therefore, I am now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. There I will give her back her vineyards, and I will make the valley of Achor a door of hope. There she will respond as in the days of her youth, as in the day she came up out of Egypt. And before I continue, please note that this begins with therefore. And you know that therefore means, because of what I just said, therefore. Jane is smiling. Therefore, I'm going to ask her why she's happy. Or, I like ice cream. Therefore, I'm getting myself a cone this afternoon. That's what therefore is there for. So, going back to what he said just before, she went after her lovers, but me she forgot. She forgot God. Therefore, I'm now going to allure her. I will speak tenderly to her. This isn't what happens because Israel has changed her evil ways. Therefore, I'm going to pursue her. No, we can't change God's mind about us. He already loves us infinitely, despite who we are and what we do. So continuing in this passage, he says, in that day, declares the Lord, you will call me my husband. You will no longer call me my master. I will remove the names of the Baals from her lips. No longer will their names be invoked. In that day I will make a covenant for them with the beasts of the fields, the birds in the sky, and the creatures that move along the ground. Bow and sword and battle I will abolish from the land, so that all may lie down in safety. I will betroth you to me forever. I will betroth you in righteousness and justice, in love and compassion. I will betroth you in faithfulness, and you will acknowledge the Lord. That last part is the key verse to this whole book. I will betroth you to me forever. God has wonderful plans for Israel and for us as we've been adopted into his family. These last two verses, the key verses, I will betroth you, they're just beautiful. Righteousness, justice, who doesn't want that? That's exactly what we all want. Love, compassion, faithfulness, and we will acknowledge God. And then he finishes this beautiful poem with, I will plant her for myself in the land, the promised land. I will show my love to the one I called not my loved one. I will say to those called not my people, you are my people. And they will say, you are my God. So those terrible names given to Hosea's children are redeemed as well. I said at the beginning that God offers us outrageous, shocking love. And rather than looking like a fairy tale or a romance novel, it can look also like humiliation. Then God tells Hosea to bring Gomer, God tells Hosea to bring Gomer back home, just like God plans to do with Israel. Then the Lord said to me, go show your love to your wife again. Though she is loved by another man and is an adulteress, love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer and a lethek of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will behave the same way toward you. Humiliation. Hosea had to buy back a wife who was no longer even worth the full price of a slave. That must have caused some snickering among Hosea's neighbors, don't you think? He could have felt humiliated by this, but he loved Gomer. Gomer had truly lost her way and didn't seem to realize she had a way out, that she could return home. This is like Jesus' story of the prodigal son, only the son came to his senses. Hosea had to go out and buy Gomer out of slavery. This brief story is a complete picture of the entire Scripture. The story that God made us and God redeemed us. We belong to him. He bought us with a price. Creation and redemption. That's it. That's everything. My old pastor, Earl Palmer, would tell the story to demonstrate this of a young boy who made himself a boat, a wooden boat. He loved it. He poured himself into making this boat. He polished it and sanded it and shined it, and he enjoyed crafting it. And when it was finished, he brought it to the river to see if it would float, and it did. It was awesome. Sadly, the boat floated away faster than the boy could run after it, so he lost it. Weeks later, the boy passed a store window, saw his boat, and he went inside and told the store owner, "That's my boat." And the store owner said, "Not anymore, it's mine now, and I'm not giving it away." So the boy went home, got all the money he had, went back and bought the boat. When he left the store, he was holding the boat, and he said, "You're mine now. I made you, and I bought you." This is the story of everything in a nutshell. We owe God everything because he made us and he bought us. He did both those things from infinite love. Sometimes God's love looks like failure. God's power can look like failure. This is what God's sovereignty looks like. It looks like humiliation. At the very heart of God, we find suffering. God's way in the world was that of a poor man named Jesus, who talked about his body and blood and bread that was broken and shared. His almighty power knelt and washed dirty feet. God's victory in the world was a gory execution that should have proved that he completely failed to bring in the kingdom. What sort of God is this? Now, of course, we say, Jesus rose on the third day, and that was victory. And that's true, of course, but the risen Jesus still bears the scars on his hands. And that's actually what he uses to prove his identity to people like Thomas, who were doubting. His way is self-giving love. He demonstrated how we must take up our own cross if we are to be like him. Suffering doesn't have the last word because God himself, in love, has embraced it. He has taken it. He has carried it through to a new day. What does all this mean to us? Just as Gomer lost interest in Hosea and ran after other men, we too can lose appreciation for our relationship with God. We can pursue dreams and goals that don't include him. And when we compromise our Christianity and adopt the ways of the world, we are being unfaithful to God. That's exactly what God accused the Israelites of. But our God is willing to do whatever it takes to show us his love. Doesn't that give you chills? Isn't that amazing grace? He will punish if it shows you that your way of doing things is wrong, but he stands ready to forgive whenever you're ready to be forgiven. He's willing to come to earth as a human and to be humiliated among those who should fall on their faces in worship. He is content to look like a failure if it draws us to him. Our God's love is infinite and it's relentless. Amen. Now, before Darlene leads us in prayer, in the prayer of thanksgiving before the offering, I want to talk to you about something else. New topic. On Friday, we had our session meeting, and I was thrilled by Victoria's report. You might remember that in July, we had a ceremony here noting that the achievements of the kids in our literacy program. These are children who can't afford to even go to public school for any number of reasons. They might not be able to afford book fees or school uniforms. Their parents might not want them in school because they want their kids to work. And they might not even have a real address. Some of them live in a tent by the lake. They've fallen through the cracks. And when we began this program, they couldn't even read. But now they can, even though some of them were like 10 or 12 years old. These kids have now learned reading, so the name of the program has changed. It's now the Presbyterian Institute of Basic Education. Victoria reported that they're now adding this year 3 more subjects. They're going to teach geography, natural sciences, and civic education and ethics. How cool is that? Victoria also obtained scholarships for 3 of the older children to the vocational school, and they're learning carpentry. So, hey, a way to earn a living. Victoria also, this summer, invited Cruz Roja to come and teach first aid. And there's Victoria on the far right, getting her arm bandaged. And as a special treat during summer vacation, the teachers took the kids to the movies. And some of these kids had never been to a movie before. And so we are grateful to God for this wonderful gift. And what she's planning next is launching what she's calling the Child Health Project. And the teachers, because the teachers had noticed during the classes that some kids don't have good vision. So Martine Torner asked his optometrist to help, and this optometrist is charging only 100 pesos each to examine the children, and he will greatly reduce the cost of any needed glasses as well. Victoria has also enlisted the help of Dental Express to examine their teeth. This is wonderful. She also holds a Bible and values class for the parents of these kids on Wednesdays. So this is a really holistic ministry that reaches deep. And I wouldn't have known about this, all the details, if I hadn't been at session on Friday. And so I knew I had to share it with you. So this is one of the most important things I think our church is doing. It's truly life-changing. So as you prepare your gift today to put in the offering, please also offer up a prayer of blessing for these kids and thank God that he uses your gifts to this church to spread Jesus' love in our community in such a special way. Thanks.